Okay, Gur. Our mission begins now. Let us rain some doom down upon the filthy heads of our doomed enemies.
I gotta sing the doom song now. Doom, 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 doom.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of What the Hell Happened to Them? Dwayne The Rock Johnson marches forward with this week's movie. Joe, what's it called?
Doom!
Yes, Doom. And
Patrick, I gotta stop for 1 second. I actually kind of like this movie.
You like the movie Doom?
I kind of liked it. I haven't seen it before. I kind of liked it. It was weird.
I'm surprised you hadn't seen it before. It feels like you were watching all of his movies. Was this okay, we'll go into that a little bit, though. Joining us this week, of course, Lev Van Rensselaer on the audio boards. Very happy to have him. And our very special guest, resident Doom expert, Mr. Geromini.
Hello.
And our sponsor this week is Dave's Dominoes. That's right, Dave Duchovny is now making a brand of X-Files-based Dominoes. Dave's Dominoes. Check them out now at davesdominoes.com. The Dominoes are out there. All right, Joe, give us a plot summary of the movie Doom.
All right. So we got Space Marines are sent to investigate strange events at a research facility on Mars, but find themselves at the mercy of genetically enhanced killing machines. Sure. Yeah. Okay.
All right, Mr. Geromini, does any of that sound like the plot of a video game Doom?
I mean, it's close. And it's especially interesting when you think about Doom having a plot, as it's one of the more famous video game series to not really have a strong plot.
So, I watched this movie Thursday night, and as I was watching it, I then messaged you, begging you to come on this weekend, because I realized very quickly, I don't know if I'm getting any of these references. I don't know if I'm understanding what's happening. This gun seems like a pretty big deal. Is that from the game, this BFG?
Yes, that's from the game. That's like the top tier game weapon.
Okay, and all these characters have like ridiculous code names. Are those like player characters from the game?
No.
And this guy in the wheelchair, is he from the game?
No, I give it a half no. At the end of the film, you see how his character is sort of this, I don't know, super muscular dog.
Yeah, with like the weird wheelchair legs. So that thing's from the game, and then they found a backstory for it.
Yes.
All right. Are you on Mars in Doom at all?
Yes.
Oh, you are? Okay. So
yeah, that is the setting.
The setting is you go to Mars to what are they? Are they demons? Like what are these creatures in Doom?
Technically, they're demons from hell, which I was disappointed the film did not
want to go in that direction.
Yeah, they completely changed that.
So why are demons from hell on Mars instead of Earth in the game?
That's a good question. Like, Doom doesn't really try to answer these questions, only that they only use them as a setting.
Okay.
I think if you wanted to dig in deep, it's probably because the company on Mars, UAC, is experimenting with portals.
I see.
And one of those portals is to hell by mistake.
Okay, so they have found a portal to hell on Mars, and now demons are coming in. You get sent in to kill them all, and then when you kill them all, the game is over?
We didn't do that in this movie.
I know. Big miss.
Well, now I feel like this conversation will make me like this movie less, which I didn't like it that much. I liked it enough to say, oh, that was okay. I wish it was shorter, but I liked it. But now I feel like I'm going to like it a lot less because there probably could be a lot cooler. Okay. All right. Let's go on.
I will say there are a couple references to the game which show out. I mean, they kept the UAC company, which is nice. And the doctor in the film, Dr. Carmack, is one of the original Doom developers, which I think is a nice shout out. And his character is actually important. It's not a total miss, but I don't think they used the license up to its full potential.
So some pre-production notes. Arnold Schwarzenegger was considered for the lead of this movie. I don't know if they actually would have been able to get him because he was this must have been really old because he was already the governor of California at this time. Vin Diesel was offered the lead but turned it down. And then they offered the John Grimm role to Dwayne Johnson, but he turned it down in favor of Sarge. Because he wanted to, he was more drawn to Sarge, and he said it was more interesting and had a darker side. And then later on, they cast Carl Urban and Rosamund Pike as John and Samantha Grimm, and didn't know that they were twins until they actually had to say it which was way later in the film.
Doesn't it really seem like something worth mentioning? Like, the fact that they're siblings, I think, was fine. The fact that they're twins didn't seem to add anything. So it's weird that they bring it up.
Yes, interesting. The Rock saying it's sort of a darker side of the character. It's really just sort of a one-note kind of character who happens to not be a good guy. It's interesting that The Rock was sort of like third or fourth choice for the role. It kind of makes more sense to me how he ended up in this film, right? This is his first non-WWE production film. This is like his first kind of real-ish film. Is that true, Joe?
Yes.
Okay.
Also, it's his first, he's a bad guy. Well, I guess he starts as a good guy, but then he reveals himself as a bad guy later.
Quite frankly, I assumed he was our main character for most of the movie, mostly because I don't think I know who any of these other actors are. I guess I know. You've
never seen Carl Urban?
No. What has he been in?
He's been in the new Star Trek movies. He plays Bones. He's been in the Judge Dredd remake. He's in Thor. He plays one of the Thor's I don't know, people on the place he lives. I don't know.
I don't remember him. More. And was he anybody in 2005? I remember the posters and The Rock being very prominent in all of them.
Yeah.
So I assumed he'd be the good guy, and then as he kept being more and more of a dick, I'm like, what direction are we going here with this movie? He got the big gun. I assumed that meant he was our protagonist, and it felt like we were gonna get a Beverly Hills Cop thing where, you had the new guy that was sort of scared, and then that guy with his brother, and he was going to be sort of what is known as a catalyst hero, where he doesn't change as they usually do in movies, but he helps other people change. And that felt like a fitting role for The Rock, but then he ended up being the antagonist and returning back to his, special effects bad guy role. I was really hoping he was going to become a scorpion demon again, but it just became weird, caveman face monster guy.
Yeah, that was silly.
Mr. Geromini, did he look like anything you've seen in the games before?
Sort of. I mean, there are a zombie class type creature in the game, so he was sort of fulfilling that role. I think they definitely didn't go all out with him like they did with some other characters. They wanted you to recognize that this is still The Rock.
Hey, look, here's a guy who's been in moderately or barely failed films recently.
Yeah, he's on a really bad streak of bombs, and it makes sense that he's fourth billed in this movie now. Wow, it's so sad how the mighty have
dropping down.
Yeah, I guess I should have paid attention to the credits, and then I would have been less surprised when The Rock ended up not being our main character. Because he's not really like a dick. He's just sort of tough as nails sergeant guy until, I don't know, 3/4 of the way through the film. And then he's like, all right, we're killing everybody. And we're like, well, how did we get here?
I do agree that one of the failures on this film is The Rock's turn from seemingly hard but good guy to ultra evil bad guy. This doesn't seem to be explained at all.
Yeah.
Can you guys name me 3 characters in this movie, their names?
One guy was named Reaper.
That was his nickname, though.
Yeah, that's all I know. Reaper, Mac, maybe. There's one guy, Mac, who was in it for 5 seconds. He was on guard duty, and then he gets his head knocked off as soon as he gets into action. One guy was the kid.
Oh yeah, okay.
Then there was like a destroyer. Like the guns named them they all seem surprised by them. Why don't they have continuous nicknames?
Their names are stupid though.
Portman? Like what does that even
Grimm.
mean? John Grimm is like with 2 M's though.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Rock's name is Asher Mahonen.
Are there any are there any people with names in these games, Mr. Geromini?
Ooh, I think in some of the later games, but I do not think in 1 and 2.
Okay.
Yeah, there are definitely named characters in Doom 3.
Yeah.
And in some of the more recent Doom games, but not in the first one.
So
the second.
Doom was like this early 90s computer game, and it's like a first-person shooter.
Yeah, like at the end. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
1993. First-person shooter.
Is it like the beginning of this first-person shooting genre?
I think a lot of people would point to this game as the beginning of the genre. There are earlier examples set in the first-person genre, of which id Software, the creators of Doom, have made one. Return to Castle Wolfenstein 3D. There are a couple other games around this time that predate Doom, but Doom, because it was so popular and sold so well, is sort of the start of this era. Okay,
so was the first Castle Wolfenstein then not a first-person shooter, and then they changed the genre?
Yes. So Wolfenstein 3D is the game I'm talking about, and that's technically the third in an installment. But those earlier 2 games were not in first person.
Oh, interesting. That's sort of a big leap. But I guess you could do it back then. So I think, I would actually, strangely enough, I would prefer Demon Portal to Mars than extra chromosome targeting people with an evil gene. What do we do? What does it say about morality in a world where people have an evil gene? Do we then not like The Rock because it's not his fault anymore? It's his genetics to be evil? Do we have to castigate him then? And also, it's weird the people who the movie thought were evil, like the guy who was super into God, and the people who weren't evil, like the weird coward guy who gets killed in the bathroom.
In some ways, it almost seems like it adds to The Rock's character, because if he has this evil gene but has been able to suppress it thus far, he's like accomplished more than the other characters who don't have the evil gene, so it's not hard for them to not be evil.
I mean, but is he suppressing it, or like if that wheelchair guy never let the demon escape to Earth anyway, do we even know? Like, does Rock is just sort of so by the book following these sort of merciless orders that, I don't know, like it would function fine if the only people they had to kill were in fact just demons, and like everybody just goes back home afterwards and like, okay, well, we lost half our team, but problem solved.
Yeah, I don't like this movie anymore. I want them to go to hell now. That sounds so much better.
Yeah, I think there are a couple failures on this film. I think one of the failures is not embracing that hell trope. Yeah. It seems so predictable that you end up in this secret tech base and they're experimenting on people. That seems played out. Where I think the hell angle is more fresh.
And also, and this is going to sound crazy, less ridiculous than what we ultimately got. I would believe Portal to Hell on Mars way more than I believe adding chromosomes to people who have a gene that makes them good or evil. And they do it with like a weird, like they get aliened, and that's how they get infected by this extra chromosome. So I would just rather the Portal to Hell, they come and they have to shoot a bunch of things, and then we're done. And yes, I don't know. I knew as soon as this movie began, I'm like, I bet I'm going to get an annoying first-person shot at some point. And not only did I get a shot, I in fact got like a 5-minute sequence that ends in what seems to be some sort of boss fight against a character, if you've been paying attention, that is transformed. I didn't need that. But Mr. Geromini, you're a fan of the game. Was that sort of a moment where you're like, all right, this is pretty cool. This is just like being in the game?
I wouldn't say it's just like being in the game. I think it's a cool nod to the Doom lineage. And I think it works in the film, because that Carl Urban's character gets injected with some nonsense at that point, and then he wakes up and we're in the first person. I think it works. It's not a perfect sequence, but it's kind of cool.
It was interesting, and I'm not sure if it's just because I had so little emotional engagement with the characters so far, but like having that 2D thing that seems to work so well in video games, and that like that movie Hardcore Henry had tried, actually felt like it disengaged me more. And I know that we had like 2 mirror shots, so we were throughout the sequence to confirm that we were still this sort of main character guy. But the fact that I felt like I was the one doing it, I don't know, took me out of it or made me care less, because it's not really related to him anymore. It seemed like I needed, as a viewer, I personally needed that visual of him to kind of anchor me in the movie if he were to be our main character.
Can I read Roger Ebert's review of this?
Sure. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. So he said, Doom is like some kid came over and is using your computer and won't let you play. I think that's pretty apt. Like, I like that. That's good. Because now I agree. Because I was like, I mean, I guess I was just in a good like headspace this morning. I was like, oh, okay. I made my breakfast. I was hanging with my little boy, and he was like playing on the ground and stuff. And I was just like, oh, you know what? This movie isn't too bad. And then you guys started talking about it. I'm like, oh, yeah, if you have to think about it, this movie is just trash.
You have to think about it.
It's derivative trash.
I don't even know if it's derivative.
I'm not going to go that hard.
Yeah, derivative feels like a strong word, too. It just feels like, I don't know. Like, it doesn't feel like they wanted the Doom property that much. Or maybe, I don't know, Mr. Geromini, is there just not that much to make a movie off of? Do you have to invent a lot of these things?
No, I think it sort of feels to me like they had a script and then they realized, oh, we could just call this Doom and we could change the evil corporation to UAC and then we're done. And so it sort of seems like they tried to adopt the Doom name to get better marketing, but they didn't actually, take a lot of inspiration from the game.
Yeah. Pretty wacky stuff there. Although I guess to Joe's sort of derivative point, here were some thoughts I had while watching the movie. When they're flying over the city of the future, I was just like, well, I wish we were just watching Blade Runner. I don't even care which cut at this point. That would be fine. And then as we got on, it just was like, am I watching The Ghost of Mars? Am I watching Dune? Am I watching Cube? Am I watching Resident Evil 1 through 12? Like, what movie am I actually going through at the moment? Had Resident Evil come out yet at this point? Was this sort of the beginning of these video game movies?
Yes, there was like 3 of them already.
Who's this director? Mr. Geromini, you might know. Who's this director that sort of directs a lot of these video game adaptations and does a terrible job? Is it like U-Ball or something? Like a weird...
You're thinking of U-Ball.
Yeah. But he didn't direct this movie. Who directed this movie, Joe?
I don't know how to pronounce his name. Hold on. I got it right here. It is Andrzej Bartkowiak.
Okay, well, that was not helpful. It's all right, sorry. Joe. It sounds like somebody who hasn't done much before or since. Is that true?
That is a true statement.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Geromini.
Oh, yeah, he was a cinematographer. That's the thing, because he did The Verdict with Paul Newman. In 82, he's a cinematographer. He's done like a bunch of good, like he did like Speed, Twins, Terms of Endearment. There we go.
Okay, there you go. I believe it's starting to become more common for cinematographers to become successful directors in our modern age. I've noticed sort of traditionally, editors often become better directors than sort of any of the other kind of key crew roles. Just sort of that's sort of what kind of goes into the skill set, that sort of need of pacing and what makes a performance work and how things can piece together, more than just how do we get a shot and a feel to kind of work in a particular sequence. Joe, is John Cena a cartoon robot now?
Excuse me?
Is John Cena a cartoon robot now?
John Cena cartoon robot? Why? What? Oh my God! And Kat Dennings? What?
Yeah,
What
I
is
saw
this?
a commercial. So here's how I watched this movie. Mr. Geromini, you said you own it on DVD. Joe, you said
DVD.
you watched. Do you own it on DVD or VHS?
Dallas and Robo?
Joe, you said you watched the director's cut version of it. How long was your version of it?
I just watched the regular one.
Okay, I watched a recording on YouTube TV that is loaned to me by a friend of mine. From the Sci-Fi Channel's recent broadcast of Doom, which happened to air quite a lot this week on that channel for some reason. Let me tell you, it's about an hour and 45 minutes. Let me tell you all the fun. I had forgotten that movies did this on TV, but they do sort of the bad dubbing over all the swear words.
Oh, please.
So we'd get like, holy smoke, and shut the friggin' door. And the gun was called the Big Fat Gun.
Oh, excellent. I love it.
And instead of him saying F yeah, where she clearly is saying, he says thank you. And then he says, what the heck is that? And then like the big climactic line was like, this stuff ends here. So we got some pretty funny lines there when people couldn't curse on the Sci-Fi Channel, which I'm surprised they couldn't, but okay. So Joe, you wanted to talk about the music.
Yeah, did you guys recognize the music, or like, do you think it was like anything worth noting of?
Was there any sort of ties to the old Doom score? Did Doom have a score, Joe, Mr. Geromini?
Doom has music. I think in the opening, that's probably as close as we get.
Okay.
Certainly, I'm not a music nut, so
none of the tunes sort of stick in your head, and then you listen to this and go like, oh, okay, that's a good nod there.
Well, the music was done by Clint Mansell. Does that name sound familiar at all?
Yeah, I think he's a at least now sort of a bigger deal score guy.
Oh, he's pretty big deal because he does all of Darren Aronofsky's films.
And he got on Doom, huh? All right. Well,
yeah,
good.
I don't know how that happened. Like, he's done like all, like, he did like Black Swan, which I think he was nominated for an Oscar for, which was like 2 years later after this.
There was
and this score was just plain. I didn't really
sort of did the job, you know.
Yeah,
it was
serviceable.
It was sort of like, it felt weird that these monsters like to sneak around so much because they were so much stronger than everybody else. So, like, when that guy's in the bathroom, I don't even know why that guy went to the bathroom to do his secret communication. I don't know what the goal of it was. I don't know why he felt the need to do it or even do it in secret. But then when he's he drops his clip and he's crawling under the stalls to get it, like, we get like this glimpse. This is one of many times we get glimpses of like the camera peeking out behind something and then hiding away again as if they're sneaking around. But like, I don't know, you're bigger than them, you're stronger than them, just like go get him. He's stuck in a stall, just go kill him or whatever. I don't know, right? Am I overthinking it from the monster's point of view?
I think you're right from the monster's point of view. I think from a film director point of view, they maybe want to try and introduce some different horror elements, like the horror of being hunted.
Yeah.
I don't think they're successful in that regard, but
yeah, there was one
for this.
particularly terrible sequence, and maybe in the non-TV version it cuts together better. Maybe there was a gory thing they were trying to hide from us. But like when they're sort of near the shot, and the rock kind of gets pulled through the wall right before then, the other guy that was hitting on the sister, he sort of gets like pulled through a grate. But like I don't see what sort of happens. He just sort of like falls through in the bottom part of the camera, and I go, well, where'd that guy go? And then like we cut to the sister like in a really tight close up, and she's like screaming, but we don't know what she's screaming about because so much is happening. And then we kind of cut back and forth between her close up and his close up. But I go like, well, I don't know what's going on with him. What's happening? And then at the very last moment, you see him like half through the grate, and then he gets fully pulled through. Very odd sort of sequence that cut together there. Not sort of, the directing wasn't great before then, but that was sort of flagrantly bad in my mind.
Yeah, I think this shows up better on the unrated extended edition like I have on DVD.
Yeah, what bonus things do you think might have been in there? Because as I was thinking, as I was going through, it didn't feel like there was very much movie at all. So I don't know what more you could add, or why didn't you put those things in there to begin with? Because we sort of spend 10 minutes in a first act, have an aggressively long second act where nothing's happening for most of the time, and then a third act where they have to go back to Earth and everybody's shooting each other. So what kind of extra meaty things do you think were in the extended cut? Was it just more shooting of things?
Well, just what you said, the meaty things.
Okay.
I think, I didn't compare it to the TV cut, but I think there's a bit more gore and violence in the unrated extended.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, why not?
I mean, the movie's called Doom. You'd expect it to be more of a slasher. You'd expect them to really play up the violence, and it's pretty tame in my opinion.
It's very tame.
Yeah, it took like three guys being dead for anyone to even put up a fight. And even when that guy's in like the prison type area fighting that dude with a pipe and trying to climb up chains, it didn't even feel like it sort of went that long and then kind of ended very suddenly. Like at a certain point, these things just kind of wanted to kill and not infect them. It just wanted to kill them, I don't know, for fun, or I'm not sure what the goal was. But it sort of there were times when it wanted to go like this alien route where there's a creature hiding and they're kind of moving through. And then all of us, I don't know, and then you kind of surprise us there. It just didn't sort of know how to do that very well.
I thought you'd appreciate them setting that up at the beginning, though, when they're like, the whole hole was like electrified, and he's like, "Oh, just touch it," and then he touches it, and then it's electrified, and you're like, "Oh, hopefully that'll come back," and then it did, and I was like, "Oh, it came back."
I didn't have to say hopefully. I knew it was going to come back. You don't waste that much time of them chatting about nothing important for that. It was hard for me to figure out the layout of the setting. I guess the lab and the archaeological site are the same. It just felt like the archaeological site was only like water-filled tunnel. When it through the window, it looks like more interesting things are being seen. Did any of these sets kind of remind you of levels in the video game, Mr. Geromini?
I think that setting for this film is a big fail. I do think that...
Well, it's not in hell.
Yeah, that's true.
It needs to be hell.
There's the settings sort of game familiar. It's got that ultra dark, we don't like lighting or safety equipment industrial vibe.
Yeah.
I think if I could make a broader point, that if you're trying to make a horror film, I think one of the key elements is removing support for the characters.
Yeah.
And the fact that these guys just sort of beamed in from Earth like 5 minutes ago, and presumably there's a whole bunch of other guys on Earth who could help, and they could also beam in, sort of detracts a lot from the horror of it, because we just know, if these guys were smarter, they could just fall back and call a bunch of more guys and backup in. It seems like as a filmmaker, I would want to cut these guys off somehow. And you could make their transporter fail or something like that.
Well, they sort of write themselves in the corner because they want the monsters to get through the transporter, but maybe there is some, like it's going to be shut off for a certain amount of time, and they're just hoping to make it to that point in time. But then the monster gets through somehow, and they're like, shit, do we go back now? And you could have had an element there. I think they do move too freely through all the different sets. It feels like they can just kind of go wherever and whenever they want. There's no cost to kind of being in one place versus being in another, because they just sort of get there with a quick cut, and there's no sort of difficulty in traversing it. It never feels like sort of moving around is unsafe. It felt weird that they kept switching teams very often for some reason. I'm not sure why. Clearly, screenwriting-wise, it was to get these characters to interact one-on-one with each other in different ways. But like the pairings felt somewhat haphazard. Nobody seemed to have a specialty that seemed well utilized. It's weird that one guy gave the other guy drugs, and that it didn't really come up very often, even though they took a moment to be like, your eyes are dilated. But like that never seemed to cause anybody any trouble later on, other than that one moment where they're like, why did you take drugs now? No, a different guy dies from that moment. And like, so like, it's not like that guy let his partner die because he was on drugs. And it's not like the other guy who gave him the drugs being on drugs was part of the issue. It just seemed to calm him down. But like, it never mattered then that he was calm. Like, it never helped the situation. It never hurt the situation. He just was like not whining so much anymore.
Well, at least he wasn't whining, right?
I guess, but it was like one of the things that made him different from everybody else. Like, it was how I could tell him apart.
Yeah, that was his personality, whining. Yeah, did you recognize anyone else besides like The Rock and? I mean, we talked about Carl Urban.
No, and I didn't even recognize the sister until I saw her name in the credits, and I was like, "Oh, she before she got sort of I don't know, was she in bigger things before this, or
I don't think so.
Is this like someone trying to break into business, and you'll take sort of whatever role, even if it's just like token woman role in your super testosterone action film?" Which also, as Mr. Geromini sort of said, didn't have for an action horror film, it didn't have much action or horror, which is crazy because it's an hour and 45 minutes and nothing else really happens. So how is there not enough of either of those going on?
So her film debut was in Die Another Day, the last Pierce Brosnan one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
James Bond.
Yeah, so she got off sort of a good start with these blockbusters.
Yeah.
Did you see this movie in theaters, Mr. Geromini? Was this sort of considered a blockbuster at the time?
I did not see this in theaters, but I do recall there being a fair bit of advertising around the time for it.
Yeah, I do remember seeing a lot of that as well, but not knowing at that time that it was a video game.
Do you think there are perhaps too many characters in this film? Like maybe if we only had Carl Urban, The Rock, the Doctor, and one other guy.
That was sort of one of my thoughts, too, when we open up and we get sort of the generic kind of tropey army beginning of like every army movie where everybody in the unit has like one or two lines. So we get a quick look at their personality and then they go off on a mission. And I thought like, well, half of these characters at least are in this movie to be killed. But then, like, they were killed extreme. Like, Mac didn't need to be in this movie. He's guarding wheelchair guy for a bit for no reason. Doesn't usually say much of anything useful there. And then they're like, come on in now. This other guy's dead. We need your help. And he goes in there and then immediately dies. And also doesn't turn into a zombie. So what was the point of that guy? We didn't need him there.
I think the point of him was to make that, like, kind of racist joke about his name. Like, oh, why do they call you Mac? And then he says his real name, and he's like, oh, I guess that's why.
Oh, because that's right. Yeah.
Like, I was like, okay, well, that was not necessary.
Yeah, just Jimmy, I think you bring a good point because your plot isn't really happening here, and you've decided not to do as much action stuff as you could for some reason. I don't know why. So it makes sense. Then you would want to have less characters so you could focus more on them, other than the fact that, like, these guys are siblings, so they care about each other. This guy's new, so he's scared. This guy, I don't even know what like, weird, long-haired, blonde guy was about. Like, he seemed to be, like, creepy? The annoying one. Yeah, and creepy, but, like, he wasn't, like, actively bad. I don't know. I don't know what his communication was. I don't know if that was sabotaging something. Because I have literally no idea what that was. But, like, that seemed to be the moment where, like, oh, this guy's not trustworthy. But I go, like, well, why? Like, what is he doing that's so bad other than abandoning his partner who was okay with him going to the bathroom at a very particularly terrible time?
Well, remember when there was a scene earlier before he made that call where he was telling The Rock, oh, we got to call in more guys. And The Rock is like, no, for some reason. And so that's why he sneaks off.
So he's sneaking off. He's sneaking off to do something very useful. Like, that's actually a very smart thing to do, but the movie doesn't want us to think it's smart. What a weird script this movie had.
I agree.
Joe, so you didn't see this movie in theaters, but you saw all the other Rock movies. Why did you skip this one?
Well, I mean, this was probably... Well... For more context, he was completely out of the WWE at the time, so
you didn't care anymore.
Seeing him. Also, I was kind of at this point stopped caring about wrestling as much as I used to. So I was just like not really into The Rock at this time. I was watching movies. I was watching movies with you because if we can jump into the box office really quick.
What were we seeing?
I think we saw a movie that weekend, but I'm not sure, so you have to tell me. Maybe I saw it with someone else. So this came out October 21st, 2005.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And it was number one the week it was released for $15 million.
Okay, that's pretty good. $15 million. My goodness, how the times have changed.
Yeah, I know. I wish I could get the... I'll look at that in a second. But it made $28 million domestic because...
How much does this movie cost?
The second week it was released, it dropped 72%. Oh, that's so bad. And then, yeah, like it dropped like dramatically each week, like lower and lower. Like it made $4 million the second week and $1 million the next week. And then the fourth week it made like $500,000. So it's just like, yikes. But it didn't really have that much competition, I don't think.
Yeah.
It had this movie called Dreamer.
Is
that Dakota Fanning? It looks like Dakota Fanning.
I don't know that one. Mm-hmm.
I've never heard of it. Then in third place was Wallace and Gromit, The Curse of the Were Rabbit.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one. Mm-hmm.
Didn't we see that?
I think we did.
It's a good film.
I think we were there together, Joe, seeing that movie.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That was the movie we saw instead of Doom.
That seems fine. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. And then there's like The Fog and North Country, Elizabethtown, Flight Plan, In Her Shoes, A History of Violence, and Two for the Money. That's the top 10.
Remember A History of Violence. A lot of those movies sound very forgettable.
That's the Cronenberg movie.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
With Viggo Mortensen.
Yes, I remember now.
It got Oscar attention from a lot of people.
Isn't that based on a comic book?
I think so.
Early comic book film.
Yeah.
So was this movie a success? Did it? I mean, it didn't sound like it made a lot of money, but maybe it was made cheaply. What was the budget of this movie?
Oh, for Doom?
Yeah.
Well, I think it made $58 million worldwide, so it's pretty low.
Okay, I don't know, but if you make the movie for $40 million, it's not sort of terrible.
Budget was $60 to $70 million.
Okay, well, that's not a good sign. But The Rock has been on some stinkers early in his career.
You're noticing a trend, huh?
It is, yeah. He has not had a very successful start. It was crazy he was still getting movies. I guess it helped that they all came out very close to each other, so nobody knew that it wasn't going to work out quite for The Rock yet.
Well, it's like the beginning of his career. Like he had two movies that were like back-to-back hits, but like he was only like a very tiny part in the first one, and then his second one was his first solo film, Scorpion King. And then it's just been diminishing returns each time. Like,
yeah, when The Rock can do sort of established franchises, he seems to do okay. But then when they try to make their own films, doesn't seem to go very well.
Seems like a pattern will repeat itself. Oh, yeah,
so interesting. Yes. But Sandler sort of had Going Overboard, which I couldn't even call a box office failure because it probably played in like 4 theaters and was made for $10,000. And then it was sort of Billy Madison into Happy Gilmore, and it was just sort of like off to the races. Whereas but maybe that's the advantage that sort of a comedy actor would have, because you can do your movies for such a low budget. Like Billy Madison couldn't have been a very expensive movie. It feels like they just sort of made it. They found like a mansion to shoot at, and then they kind of went to town from there.
And got a school.
And somehow got a school too. Mm-hmm. So,
do you want to know the budget for Billy Madison?
Sure, yeah.
$10 million. Box office 26.4.
Yeah, see, like that's so easy to do that, but like an action film, it feels like it's hard to do that for sort of a low/reasonable budget. So you'd have to be this big kind of spectacle kind of thing to draw in the money you need to do it. So The Rock is sort of already starting off kind of a few steps back of Adam Sandler just by the nature of the films that they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, The Rock. Dwayne The Rock.
Dwayne The Rock Johnson, who this very week has come down with the coronavirus.
Oh, I was hoping we were going to talk about that because he's in recovery. He and his family are recovering right now. They're quarantining themselves and they're on the other side of it, they said. So I had a meeting this positive news.
I had a meeting this week, or yesterday, I should say, with somebody on a TV pilot I'm about to work on. Once the quarantine goes down. And he was the showrunner of that was just like, oh man. And The Rock has coronavirus. 2020, what a shitty year. If The Rock dies to the coronavirus, we're all doomed. If The Rock can't beat it up, no one can.
Because he's so strong.
Okay, yes, I think that was what the guy was going for. Mm-hmm. So,
very strong.
everybody, I want to ask you something. What do you guys think about the ending? Because to me, it just sort of stops. Right? Is that how you guys felt that the movie
Where's the sequel?
was
sequel,
going
right?
for a while, and then like they get on the elevator, and then we fade to white, and then the movie's over? It felt like an odd place to sort of abruptly cut the movie. It definitely
wish
made me
they-
think of the first kind of Resident Evil sort of movie.
But don't you wish they were like the elevator was going down and then they opened up and just the last shot was just like burning flames around them and they're going into hell?
Well, like I don't know.
So much better.
That would have been interesting.
I don't know how
Yeah,
you end
thank
this
you.
film interestingly because you didn't set it up to have an interesting ending, but it was just like, okay, I guess, you know, the action and explosions are done now, so let's be over. And like he's like, can you get to the elevator? And then gets to the elevator and then she doesn't go anywhere. Apparently she's just been hanging out on the elevator, probably unconscious, waiting for that guy
She's
to
waiting
come
for
back.
him, right?
I don't know why you have to wait. Get on the elevator, go, get off, and then when he needs the elevator, he'll just push the button, as we do all the time in our
Yeah,
society.
that is how elevators work.
Yes. So,
Make a good point.
but like she was just waiting there through his extremely lengthy fight with The Rock.
It was very long.
It was so long, and some parts were interesting, but I probably didn't need to be that long. Most of the time, I don't know, like when they both have superhuman powers, like I don't even know kind of how to know who's winning anymore or what people are capable of. The Rock didn't seem to mind. Like, was the guy trying to stretch his arm when he was like tied up in the grail or like the rails of that upper level? I don't even know what the goal was there.
I was having a hard time telling what was going on because it was so dark. But yeah, I agree.
And like, was there a point in that fight where they decided to stop shooting at each other and like fight face? Like, did one of them still have like
That made no sense.
gun bullets left and was just like, okay, we'll have an honorable duel. Clearly, Kurt's like figure, The Rock.
The other thing is, every time The Rock has been in a fight scene since he started like being the star of his movies, he always has to have that shot where he's on the ground and then he like kicks up his feet and then he's back on his feet again. And I'm like, do we have to have this shot in every single one of his movies?
It's in his
Why?
contract.
Yeah, but
It's dumb now.
you know what's crazy though about the sort of the fight scenes in this movie? They actually do a better job most of the time than Marvel. Marvel's films sort of rely a little too much on cutting during the fighting so that you can sort of make it look like a fight's happening. These camera lengths actually kind of hold for quite a while, these shots. So like there is a lot more fluidity and actual action happening, probably the advantage of having someone like The Rock. I don't know about the other guys' sort of stunt background, but at least that was a nice aspect of the fight. And it was sort of weird. There was a weird moment in the fight where we actually have the POV of the bad guy as The Rock is sneaking around the pillar with like his giant thing that he found, and he thinks he's going to hit the main guy as he's walking up, but then The Rock goes there and the main guy isn't there anymore, and then the main guy shows up behind him. Fairly often tactic used for the good guy, but it's odd that we switched to the bad guy's point of view. And I don't know why you'd want to do that directing wise, because I don't know, like we don't want to root for the good guy getting hit. So it just felt like a weird POV to take in that moment.
I do wish in the final fight they had sort of bumped up The Rock to be a little more horrifying.
Yeah, like I kept waiting for like the big
with his
transformation, and like the best we got was like crappy looking version of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer vampires. So what was the point?
Yeah, he just had like big teeth.
Yeah, big teeth and like a big sort of Neanderthal brow, and I go like, is that what demons look like? Is that what we're supposed to do?
That's not what my demons look like.
And it seemed like there was like a quarantine going on because did they set up the quarantine when the monsters
glad you
broke
brought
in?
this up.
And then like the quarantine ended, and that allowed him to open up the portal to then send The Rock through, and before The Rock could get out of the portal, the bomb comes through.
He got sent to the portal, and then Carl Urban threw a grenade in after him.
Yeah, and then you didn't have to worry about shutting down the portal at that point. Not that you would want a portal to that hellscape anymore, I imagine, but
yeah, it certainly relies on you making a couple deductive jumps to understand what's happening at the end.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I thought the movie would be lower budget because we did end the movie before they could get out of sort of these sort of limited sets that we had access to. Like, they didn't want us to go in the real world of the movie, which might have been a nice way to have the elevator doors open to go outside, and then there's like green stuff that we'd get to see for the first time in the movie, and we would feel like the movie's over. It's a bit on the nose, but at least it's something more than the elevator going somewhere. It just didn't feel to tie up anything or feel like anything resolved.
It gets back to my main point, but they should have just kept it all on Mars and then at the end jump to Earth. You know, they could have the twins Grimm jump through this portal, blow it up behind them, and then when they land back on Earth, there's like a ton of guys there, and they're all sort of rushing around, and then you'll have one moment where they embrace. That sort of ending. Instead of the weird, just ride this elevator into the credits.
Yeah, and going to your earlier point, if we had had less characters, we could have also spent more time with them before they even go to Mars, and then felt more connected with them and see what their power dynamics are. And been a little more invested that way, and then it wouldn't feel like it's such a slog to get through the Mars stuff because we're there for like an hour and 20 minutes, and nothing sort of happens there anyway, really. Not enough to justify that running time.
Remember when I came in so hot saying I like this movie?
Wow, this is just like The Waterboy. You switched really quickly on this. Well,
yeah,
Joe,
but this way was the other way. I didn't like The Waterboy, and then The Waterboy became like my third favorite Sandler.
Well, so what made you like it last or whenever you watched it that made it so easy to change?
Because, I was not thinking about it. I was just letting the movie happen, and then you make these points and all of these good arguments, and I'm just like, this movie could have been something, and it was nothing.
I mean, I guess I'm not even trying to make an argument. It's just what came to mind. But like, is that sort of the point, though? Like, am I watching the movie wrong? Not just letting it happen? Like, was that the movie's distribution strategy? Hey, target demographic. Just sit back, relax, and don't think. Just escape for 2 hours. Am I doing something wrong by not engaging with this film at this level? Or is this film a failure because it's hoping to work on that axis, the axis of not engaging?
No, the movie was bad.
It's just bad. Okay. What are your thoughts there, Mr. Geromini?
I don't hate this film. It's certainly not a good film, but I think there are things that I find enjoyable about this film. For me, it's very easy for me to watch a film and just turn my brain off.
Yeah.
And I can enjoy what this film is trying to do. You know, there's running around, they're fighting, they're shooting monsters, there's a little bit of horror. It strikes me as the kind of film you watch on a plane or maybe on a very lazy Sunday.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like I wasted 2 hours, but, you know, it is forgettable.
Yeah.
So,
Also, the movie was 95 minutes because there's another 10 minutes of credits.
The movie felt
That
way
was
longer
great.
than the last movie that had an aggressive amount of credits. That's kind of funny.
Well, that movie was 72 minutes long.
Yeah, that movie needed to have 15 minutes of credits. This movie, I don't know why this movie needed a long credit sequence. You're already an hour and a half, like you're good. You cleared the benchmark. Just sort of ride it out then. I don't know. It felt like, going on Mr. Geromini's point, it felt like, you know, I understood why this movie was airing on Sci-Fi Channel so much. It's sort of the perfect Sci-Fi Channel movie. You're flipping through channels, you catch it, you go like, Doom, I'll watch the rest of this. And like, you just sort of want something to kill some time. It felt like it would be perfect for that. I didn't enjoy this movie. I certainly don't think it's a good movie. I think a big part of the problem is that, as I sort of listed a bunch of movies at the beginning of the podcast, those are movies that did all the things that this movie wanted to do better. It was sort of like a failed Frankenstein of those movies. So I'd rather just watch those movies again. Certainly, we had a trend here where The Rock's movies were getting better, quote unquote. This sort of breaks that trend 5 in. I certainly wouldn't pick this over, I mean, probably any of the films. Maybe The Mummy Returns. I don't know. That movie's so goddamn long. I don't want to watch it ever again.
Yeah, not fun either.
Those are some of my thoughts there. All right, any last sort of things we want to get off our chest before we go on to our last looks?
I have a couple odd points which aren't really related to anything else.
Yeah.
I want to give a shout out to Doug Jones, who plays the monsters in a bunch of this film.
Okay.
He's awesome.
Yep.
And he's in Star Trek Discovery now, and he remains awesome.
That's great to
He
hear.
was also in The Shape of Water.
Did that win an Oscar?
It did.
I can't remember.
That won the Best Picture.
So
which I
guess
strongly
you
disagree
didn't
with,
Oscar
but very well.
It was an odd year to give that Best Picture when there was I liked the movie a lot, but there was a lot of better movies that came out.
There were better movies. It was certainly the most anti-Trumpian of the films, which is why I think it made sense that year. But as a movie by itself, it's not better than a lot of the competition.
By Your Name was a very
but this movie's actively anti-Trump. It's a bunch of sort of minorities teaming up against sort of a white male government official. It's legitimately anti-Trump.
Yeah.
But yeah, Call Me by Your Name, definitely better film. I think some of the other films were definitely better films as well, though I can't remember on the top of my head. All right, anything else you wanted to say, Mr. Geromini, or was that sort of your big shout out?
I really like the costuming in this film for the monsters. I think a lot of films from this era try to get a lot done with CG, and the fact that they went hard on practical monster costumes that look pretty good, even though we mostly see them in dark corridors, I think is a big win for this film.
Yeah,
agree.
I'm always a fan of practical effects. It definitely felt like it wanted to do the Alien thing where it wanted to hide these things as much as possible from us until the very end when we got them all at once. Problem being that you didn't really get much value out of the mystery of them. I think it's sort of too complicated because we have to know that these people were once the human team we saw earlier in the movie. And then, we have to, I don't know, the fact that there's more than one kind of complicates some things because we have to know that too, that it can transform things, that it shoots weird, sea cucumbers out of their mouths into people's necks, specifically necks for some reason.
Yeah, that was gross.
Where Alien's sort of a simple thing. There's one thing on your ship. Find it. And I think the fact that it's so simple allows you to kind of hide it in the background for most of the movie, where here you have such a complicated mythology already based around quirky chromosome stuff instead of simple portal to hell. You have the skeleton of Lucy, which was so originally named. Unless, I don't know, was the real Lucy discovered at this point? Or am I misremembering the timeline?
The actual artifact called Lucy?
Had we discovered sort of the earliest human remains Lucy yet? And this was a nod to that? Or did this just happen to be a coincidence and they were discovered at the same time?
Wikipedia says 1974 discovery date.
Okay, so yeah, they clearly were here's Mars Lucy. Look, she's protecting her kid. She must have good chromosomes because she wanted her child to live. What are you doing? I can't be scared movie because you're so ridiculous. And then there was the other female scientist that was helping them with the doctor that they found. And she's just hey, I'm going to leave now. And that was it.
Yeah.
And so why does she even need to be there? Why was she necessary in that scene? What was the goal? And the fact that she showed up randomly, she disappeared randomly and didn't have a name was that's not going to bode well for you. But then we don't see her for an hour anyway. And then she's in a room full of survivors that also off screen gets killed off at some point. So it didn't even matter that they were dead. There was no emotional stake because we didn't feel it. The Rock just came in and he was just yeah, I took care of it. No biggie. And that was it.
Yeah, big miss with her character. It certainly seems like you could kill her midway through and then you could ratchet up the tension / horror that way.
Yeah, or there could have been a thing where she would, Rosamund Pike was talking to her and then she doesn't answer back and she's what? And then she goes and finds that she's missing, but also the doctor is missing. And that, we don't have to see her get killed off, but then we get an idea something probably bad happened. I don't know. You set it up, but then you didn't knock him down. Movie, why? Why?
Movie, why? I like it. Movie, why?
So, Joe, you have texted me an image here of The Rock saying from the movie, he says, "We uphold quarantine. Nothing gets to the elevator back on Earth." Do we... Are we meant to, in 2020, are we meant to identify more with The Rock's character because of that? He's okay with the lack of freedom and that we have for the sake of security vis-a-vis our health?
Well, The Rock is our 2020 version of Superman.
Oh, is he?
Yes, because he is also he's on the front lines. He's battling COVID.
Yes, that is true. Mm-hmm.
And he's telling us to stay in quarantine because he knows what this is now, and he is taking this seriously.
But he didn't. But there was. But see, apparently there was a time where he didn't and was somewhat reckless and got his whole family infected.
Yes, he did.
So I don't know if it's really the success story you want to paint it as.
Well, that was his human version, but the alien version of him is the Clark Kent was the guy that got sick.
Okay.
The Superman version is him saying, "I'm going to fight this, and I'm going to take care of all you civilians because I'm strong Rock."
I mean, it just sounds like classic celebrity move where like, oh, somebody I know has this disease. Let me now do something about it.
I mean, Tom Hanks was the first one.
Oh, that's right. Tom Hanks had it way back at the beginning. I remember that. Yeah.
Tom Hanks declared COVID is real.
Yeah. Mr. Geromini, you had some more points you wanted to bring up.
So the nice thing about having the DVD version is I got to watch the 30 minutes of special features about this film.
Okay, what did you learn?
I have been doing that for the past few times, but I missed doing it this time.
What did you learn? What did you glean?
Would it surprise you to learn that this film had a military advisor?
Well, maybe a little bit. A little bit.
They spent 2 weeks on military training, in quotes.
I don't know how much of that got like captured on screen though. I guess I believed it, but also I've believed less believable army stuff. I just know so little about that kind of thing.
Were they holding their guns properly? Is that what they learned how to do?
They were talking a lot about how they were training like to do patrols and shoot guns and how they would run and fall back.
Okay.
That seemed to be the extent of their training.
I wonder if like part of it is like that's sort of a chunk of who they thought their target audience would be, like servicemen and women. And so maybe they were like, well, we got to make sure we get this right so they don't make fun of us in the movie theater. There's a logic to it I could buy. Also, Mr. Geromini, just real quick aside, when he finds the big fat gun, it's like floating in a room by itself in between two pillars. Is that how it's found in the game? Like, why is it just kind of like hanging out in the middle of space?
I would say that's a very game-like way to find a big, powerful weapon.
Yeah.
As to how it's actually found in the game, I can't recall.
Okay. It felt weird that...
But, floating alone in its room is...
Yeah.
It's very video
game-like. It felt weird that they have drew so much attention to it throughout the film. It's a big callback to the game, and yet he shoots it like twice, and never to like great effect.
Yeah, he never hurts anybody with it, right?
Like it never seemed to do anything super useful. It did like I don't know. It just destroyed parts of building, and you were like, "Oh, cool, big gun." And then he's supposed to shoot it at the end at the guy, and he just misses. So
yeah,
what was all that set up for? Mr. Geromini, keep on going.
It's the problem when you give a character a super powerful weapon. Like, they can't actually use it or else there's no...
Yeah, and it was really early in the film. He got it. So, like, you had nowhere to go with it at a certain point.
Do you think him missing was a metaphor for this movie? Like, they tried and they just kind of missed their target.
Yeah, probably. I'm sure that's how well they thought about it. I actually had a rant where the T-Rex in Jurassic World was actually a metaphor for Jurassic Park 1. And the whole thing is that like the main characters go to find Jurassic Park 1 to come help them save the movie of Jurassic World. Symbolized by the weird mutant dinosaur. And so that's why the T-Rex has to come in and save the day to be like, look, Jurassic Park's still awesome. See, Jurassic Park has come in and saved the day. And now, look, the movie ends with him screaming up into the air. You love Jurassic Park. Pretend we're Jurassic Park. But I've gone on a bit of a digression there. All right, Mr. Geromini, any other points?
Okay. Bringing it back to dinosaurs.
Yeah,
I know you.
Always dinosaurs. Any other points, Mr. Geromini?
I was bummed how they don't have any helmets, which is kind of a minor critique, but dangerous situation, lots of metal, strap a helmet on that noggin, protect it.
Yeah,
that's
I feel like movies
actually-
don't like to do that because then you can't see your stars very well.
They could have figured a way around it.
Yeah, I get how there's a filmmaking reason why they're not there, but they spent 2 weeks on military training.
What is this effing wall in this movie? Is that from the game, Mr. Geromini? Can either of you explain to me what the wall actually is?
I've never played
Not from any game that I know about.
So, like, because he's like the guy sort of on guard with the sister early in the film is just like, oh, I don't do this type of wall. And I go, what type of wall? What's the problem with the wall? They just sort of pass in and out of it. It seems fine. And then, half hour, 40 minutes later, you see that the wall sort of solidifies into some sort of material. But, like, why? What's the point? What was it called? Was it like a nano wall? Like, what?
Didn't they call it a nanomolecular wall?
I don't know. Like, it just didn't. And like, did they ever explain it more? And I just missed it. Of like, what the fuck? I don't know. Like, I clearly we see what the wall is, but like, we were talking about the wall for quite a bit without knowing what it does, and it might have helped me not be confused. And then like, the wall didn't work near the end of the film, just like for fun, I guess. Like, what? I don't know why it didn't work there, but worked earlier when you needed it to.
Well, it was just for fun.
Just for fun, exactly. All right, sorry.
Doors in this film in general are very dangerous.
They are. That hand that got cut off right at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah. Did that woman
was
ever
cool.
come
That's
back
where I
as
was
a
like, oh, I'm
demon?
in.
Like, because I was waiting for like the armless demon to come out at people, and I don't remember ever seeing it.
Yeah, I didn't see that either.
All right.
No,
well.
wasn't that the one they remember a creepy guy and young guy were like mucking around and they found a woman with no arm in the locker room?
Oh, I don't even remember that. So she didn't get turned into a monster because apparently I guess she was a good person who had good genes. She was,
Yeah.
she did like this. Doesn't this feel like it gives way to a master race kind of theory? All right, everybody who has the good person genes, we are the superior race, clearly. We are morally good. We will run the world, and everybody who has the evil gene needs to be locked up, contained, and put into a gladiator pit for our own enjoyment.
That's the sequel.
Like, that's... I don't know why you had to go do that and open up all these moral quagmires when you could just have it be a portal to hell. It would be fine. Or just have them be Martians even. That would be okay too. I'd be okay with that because you've made it weirder and clunkier by not doing that. All right, sorry to rant.
Do you think this is just a screenwriter thing where they want to actually make a film that sort of has more going on in it than just a simple plot like that?
Well, I think there's a trend of like maybe even at that time period, though I couldn't give you any good examples, of like trying to explain fantasy kind of elements. And so they're like, all right, we have this portal to hell, but how do we make it more believable? And the best they could come up with was like evil genes and a bonus chromosome that gave people super strength and healing. I'm not a chromologist or whatever they would be called, a geneticist. I can't imagine that is how I'm a chromologist. I can't imagine that is how chromosomes work. I just can't fathom it. That one chromosome can do all that and work based on other chromosomes telling us if a person's good or evil, based on very modern, very culturally localized morality. That's my thought there. All right. What else you got on your list of grievances, Mr. Geromini?
I wish that Dr. Grimm had gotten like a flak jacket or something in the beginning. It's weird how all these heavily armored guys roll in and then the doctor's like, oh, I gotta come with you too. And she has nothing. She has a shirt and jeans. Give her one of those like reporter in a war zone, slightly too big flak jackets, just so that I can feel like she's in a little danger here.
They really, really shoved her in there very quickly. They clearly wanted to have that character in there, but lazily wanted to add her to the team when there probably wouldn't have been a lot of good reason to do that.
Might have been cool if she was part of the RRTS team as like their science advisor or something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And not part of the UAC.
Yeah, there could have been a lot of ways to do it, but then I don't know. Do you lose some of the dynamic? Like, there's supposed to be a tension of like, I don't know, her coming to work on Mars where their parents died, and him not wanting to do it, even though he ended up there anyway, and also ended up in, as a soldier for the corporation that I don't know backs the excavation. So like, how far away did he even really get? Like, what moral high ground was he on anyway? But fortunately, they abandoned that plot line pretty early on and don't ever feel the need to resolve it. So,
Yeah, what did you just cut that whole twin relationship right out? Just make them two characters in this film.
Yeah, you could have made them love interests and it would have been the same effect. Like, it really didn't, it just was sort of like generically, these two people care about each other. Like, that was it. And why can't we be bold and have a movie where two people care about each other and they're not related and they're not going to fall in love with each other? Like, they're just, especially in a movie where you're playing up sort of people being good versus bad just naturally. Maybe like he just is a decent person and so he doesn't want this science lady to die, who's sort of a civilian, didn't sign up for this kind of stuff. Everybody else is either turning demon or dying around him. So like, I got to protect one person at least. One person out of these two locations has to make it out alive. I don't know. That would be sort of interesting to see. But do we not have a more visceral reaction because of it? Because there isn't something that's in there? Or is sort of the sibling / love interest thing kind of a crutch to get motivation across easily without having to explain it and or depict it?
I wish they weren't related. I wish they weren't love interests, because also I think I get really weird vibes the whole time. Like, before they announced that they were like related, I was like, do they like each other? They seem to be like, have like, I don't know. It was just weird chemistry. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought they were going to be love interests too, and then they were siblings, and I go like, okay, maybe they explained that earlier and I wasn't paying attention. I don't know.
They're twins. They look just alike.
Yeah,
they're twins.
All right, we have to start sort of wrapping up now, Mr. Geromini. So if you have extra thoughts, I'm sorry, or you can try to sort of rapid fire them right now.
Nah.
Okay,
I've made all the points I want to make.
All right, so last looks here for me, we're sort of tracing The Rock's career. It felt odd to me watching this movie that he would take this role, as he wasn't sort of the main character. He wasn't top billed, but then and had to play sort of a bad guy for the first time in a while.
He wanted to play a bad guy
in a movie with sort of not really any stars yet, although I guess Rosamund Pike sort of was a bigger name than I was realizing, and the main guy apparently was a big guy I didn't know about. I just didn't recognize anybody from that era. But then I thought like, okay, well, it's his first non-WWE film, so he doesn't have sort of the connections he's had. A lot of his movies have been failing. So maybe he has to take kind of what he can get and try to sustain it, and maybe he's trying to move into a different role. And essentially what we got was just a grumpier version of his normal role. It was pretty much his role from that movie that took place in South America, but like he was less likable. Yeah, it was like The Rundown, but he was less redeeming. He was just like less fun or something. Like, he's still very straight-laced, by the books. I'm taking you in because that's what the job is. And he was just same character, different genre. So he just becomes more curmudgeonly and apparently evil because he has that gene. So I guess I do buy that he would sort of take a step back to do this role because he hasn't been solidified yet as the box office gold he will later become. What are your guys' last looks on this movie or The Rock in general?
Well, my last looks, I'm so happy that we've made the premier Doom podcast now. We have really dug into this movie more than anything even the screenwriters thought about. Yeah, The Rock's in a weird place right now, but not trying to show my cards or anything, but next week is my favorite Rock movie. I'm so excited.
Well, that's good news.
We'll get into that more next week, obviously, but yeah, very excited for next week.
All right, Mr. Geromini, what do you got?
I think ultimately you have a film that's watchable, but could have been a lot better. As far as The Rock goes, I think he's okay in this film. Why he might have picked this role, I think at the time people wanted Doom to be, or people at least thought Doom was going to be a big hit, and so maybe he bought into that hype as well.
Yeah,
and so he wants to establish himself as a big action movie hero. So, well, I'll be in Doom. It's supposed to be this big film, but that didn't pan out.
So when this movie came out, had a Doom game come out recently? Was a Doom game about to come out? If this game started coming out in the early to mid 90s, it feels like 10 years later you'd sort of missed the mark.
This is around the time. So this film's what, 2005?
Yes.
Yep.
Doom 3 came out in 2004.
Oh, okay.
And there are there's an Xbox release in 2005. So it's close to this time.
Yeah. Okay.
If you were in video games, you would have been aware of Doom 3 at this time.
Okay. Good to know. Well, Mr. Geromini, we'd like to thank you for coming on. What is your blog again for our new listeners or listeners who don't want to listen to grown-up episodes?
blog.paulgeromini.com. I'm sure it'll be in the show notes.
It sure will, as always. Like to thank.
It will be now.
It's in the grown-ups. It's in there too. All right, for the careful viewer. Joe, of course, we'd like to thank you. We'd like to thank Lev Van Rensselaer, the audio maven, making the noises that you are craving. We would like to thank this week's sponsors, Dave's Dominoes, the only domino brand officially sponsored by Dave Duchovny. The dominoes are out there. And, of course, I would like to thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in this week, as you hopefully do most weeks. I am your host, Patrick Scale. You can find my features, documentaries, short films, film essays, animations, and other such behind-the-scenes content at quixoticunited.com or at social medias with presumably some sort of similar name. Thank you all for listening. Joe, say goodnight.
Good night.
Proximity warning. Planet ahead.
We're here. We're finally here.
That's definitely baby. Wow, what a head of hair.
I know, he's 8 months.
Getting jealous,
I
Mr.
think I'm
Geromini?
just jealous for people now that I'm losing my hair.
Oh, don't worry, I'm right there with you.
Good luck.
You look pretty fine, Joe.
What's that?
You look fine to me, Joe.
Yeah, it's thinning, that's all.
I see.
Mine's in full-blown retreat.
Oh, I'm sorry. Unless you don't care, then good for you. I'm trying to be getting at the no care face. Tanya is like, whatever. And I'm like, but you will care when it happens. Oh, my baby. Look at this baby. He's so happy.
What is the baby's name?
Julian.
Named after the football player. Good choice.
We named him after Frankenstein, a.k.a. Julian and Big Daddy. That's what I say.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Do you remember that?
I do now that you've given me enough context clues to get your extremely dated reference.
How is he? Come here. I'll put him on video. We're not starting yet.
We have an even specialer guest this week, ladies and gentlemen.
Are we recording?
No, Joe.
Okay. Look at my baby. He's alive. Don't touch that. Oh. Alive and in color.
I'm sure he's not impressed by the giant P in the name Paul on the screen, though. So, Julian, you have any hot takes on Doom this week? No? No, he's already
actually
gone.
Watched like the last half of it with me, so I don't know. What do you think, bud? He doesn't really talk yet.
He's shy, I get you. I was shy when I was his age.
Maybe he can talk, but is deciding not to.
Yeah. You don't know, Joe. He's taken on this Buddhist lifestyle, this vow of silence. What is he, 8 months old?
Do you remember the film Genius Babies?
I think it was just Baby
Geniuses?
Yeah.
Oh,
Say
you
it
might be
backwards.
I saw that
I've
movie,
seen that terrible movie
at the Zoetrope. Fun
Yes.
fact. When it was still
I
there.
remember one critic was like, it's the live action Rugrats. And I'm like, fuck you, no it's not.
It's like Look Who's Talking Now, but with spies. Something like that.
Yeah, oh my God, that was like almost exactly what they were doing. With less talented people in it. No offense.
Christopher Lloyd is in this film.
Yeah, but I like... I mean, I guess, yeah.
Christopher Lloyd took some questionable roles at this
Was
time
Kathleen
period.
Turner even in it? I don't remember. I'm looking this shit up.
Yes.
We don't need to look
was.
up baby geniuses. The world does not
the
want
cast
to
list of
know.
baby geniuses.
Did you watch this recently, Mr. Geromini?
No, I just got to the Wikipedia page before you did.
Look at the picture. Look at this. This is the picture that's on the top.
Is that like a baby pope or like a baby?
Baby Pope.
A baby Jackie
The
O.
young Pope? Is it the new young Pope?
Oh, it's the younger Pope.
The younger Pope.
It's a prequel, yeah.
Okay, hold on. The cast. Top billed. Kathleen Turner. Christopher Lloyd. Kim Cattrall. Peter something. I've never seen this guy. Dom DeLuise. Oh, Dom DeLuise. You animated my childhood.
Were these people all the baby voices?
No, not yet. I don't think. Ruby D. Where we get the? Yeah, I think the baby voices weren't anybody in particular, though.
Well, they had to be someone.
Maybe they were like famous voice actors at the time.
Look at Rotten Tomatoes 2%. I've never even seen that. I've always seen 0, but 2%. That means some people actually.
Some people were like, "All right, you know what? It's fine."
I mean, I recall enjoying it when I was very young.
Yeah.
I definitely watched it multiple times on VHS when I was way too old at 9 years old.
I fortunately watched it just the one time, and I've been okay with that all my life.
It must be a special difficulty to direct babies, though.
Wow, Sam McMurray as Goon Bob and Jim Hanks as Goon Ray. Oh my God, is Jim Hanks related to Tom Hanks, though? I bet he is. He kind of looks like Tom Hanks, but like skinnier and balder.
He's no Colin Hanks, though. I'll give you that.
Did you see this film uses CGI for the lip flaps on the baby?
Yeah.
I mean, I would imagine that. Mm-hmm. You're not putting peanut butter in their mouths. I don't know if that would be allowed.
Why would you put peanut butter in their
That's
mouth?
what they did for Mr. Ed.
Hello, I'm Mr. Ed. A horse is a horse, of course, and no one can talk to a horse, of course. That is, of course, unless the horse is the famous Mr. Ed. Go right to the source and ask the horse. He'll give you the answer that you endorse. He's always on a steady course. Talk to Mr. Ed. People yakety yak the streak and waste your time a day. But Mr. Ed will never speak unless he has something to say. A horse is a horse, of course, and this one will talk till his voice is hoarse. You never heard of a talking horse? Well, listen to this. I am Mr. Ed.